Hi, Tracy here, and I'm so happy to be back with another process video for a 12 by 12 layout. I used the Hip Kit Club for November today, and I'm going to share the process with you guys. I'm really pleased with how it turned out. So here I am starting with this photo, and I immediately made it bigger. This is at first it was, I think, a 2.5 by 2.5 or maybe a 3 by 3. I printed it up to 4 by 4 with a border. That's 4 by 4 including the border. And so I just used my Creative Memories trimmer to trim it up. I thought for a second there of using both of them, but no, I'm not going to do that. I like to do that if there's a really simple photo of a person, but not with a landscape like this. So I'm just looking at the paper that came in the Hip Kit Club kit for, this is the month of November, and it has all kinds of papers from the Snow and Cocoa collection and a couple of other collections as well. And so, I would love to use this as my background paper, but it just doesn't work with that blue sky. I mean, maybe I could have made it work, but I'm not going to use that as my background. So I'm going to keep on looking for another paper that might make a good background. And I'm really loving all of these papers, but none of them are quite working. And then I saw this gray one with the snowflakes all over it, and it's really appropriate because this one is going to be called First Snowfall 2016. And so since it has the snowflakes all over it, I thought that would be kind of cool. They might be stars, but I don't know. I'm considering them snowflakes. I think they're snowflakes. So I'm cutting this paper to a little bit less than 12 by 12. I'm cutting it to 11.5 by 11.5. And that way I can mat the whole page on a piece of cardstock or something. So my first thought was that this tree paper really worked with the theme of this layout because it is a picture of trees in my backyard. This was our very first sprinkling of snow. This wasn't our first major snowfall, but this was our first little sprinkling of snow that actually accumulated. And so I'm definitely going to use this tree pattern paper. This is from Crate Paper's Snow and Cocoa collection, which is one of my favorite collections of the whole entire year. I love this collection. And so I'm just going to use my ruler to tear some straight lines here. I like to use my ruler because tearing gives a little bit of extra interest to my layers, and the ruler helps to keep it nice and straight. So at first I thought I might make this layout be kind of the square photo with a square mat around it and have the whole thing in the center of the page. And then I kind of started thinking that maybe I'd use this paper as the mat instead, but I love the look of this paper, and when I use it as a mat, I lose the fact that there are trees on it. So then I thought I would use it as a mat, but I would also take some other pieces of it here, and I'm just using my ruler to tear some more pieces and put them on either side so that I have this centered design with a little bit on each side and then the square in the center. And so I'm just having a look at what other patterns I have, and I'm looking for a pattern that I can layer behind the tree pattern paper. And so I'm taking my scalloped edge border, and I cut, and this is my mistake, I made this strip too small. What I thought I would do is make it disappear behind there and behind that piece of tree pattern paper. And so that was just school texting to say that school is canceled. And so my kids were going to be sent home on the bus because we're having a big snowstorm today as I create this layout about the first little skim of snow. So I thought that if I cut this in half, I could layer it like this. And then I thought, you know what? It looks a lot better so that it doesn't just, it's not just on the edge. I wanted to see a little tiny bit of it at the top too. And so I thought, oh darn, I really cut this way too small. And then I thought maybe I can just make up for that by this is like the silliest idea ever. This is what happens when you don't scrapbook often enough. You think you're better than you are. I'm like, oh yeah, I can totally just patch that together. And I'm like, no, that looks kind of ridiculous. So I'm going to cut that whole thing off, and I'm going to just start all over again. So I grabbed a much wider strip, and now I will use that same scallop border punch right along the edges here. I love this little small scalloped border punch. I have a larger scalloped border punch that I often use as well, and I didn't even cut that straight, so that's what my arms exclaiming are all about. I'm like, what the heck? How did I manage to cut that so poorly? But anyhow, it doesn't matter because it's going to extend off the edge of the page and be cut off anyway, so it doesn't really matter that it's not straight, but I will have to straighten it at some point. I'm gluing the tree paper to the pink pattern paper below it so that you see just a little edge of it, mostly at the top and not so much at the bottom. I want them to be the same on each side, and now I'm just going to run some plain stitching, just some straight stitching, right down one side. I use just my regular needle. It does get dull when you sew on paper, and so you'll just want to keep another needle handy for when you sew with fabric, which I don't do all that often. And then there we go. And now I'm just going to cut this off because it's going to throw off my design. Like if it's too wonky, if the angle is too off like that, I'm afraid that I'm going to accidentally attach it on a wrong angle. So I'm just cutting it to make it a little bit more even there. I just pulled up the edges of that bordered punch just so that it can cast a bit of a shadow and add some really nice texture and dimension to the page. And now I'm going to think about where I might put my title. And it occurred to me that these wood veneers that came in the Snow and Cocoa collection that came in the kit, in the hip kit for November, that they would make a nice title if I'm going to call this First Snow. So I just taped, the washi tape is there just because I taped that package back shut again, and I grabbed that snowflake paper clip from the Snow and Cocoa collection that also came in the kit. These are hip kit embellishments that came in the kit, and then I have this Echo Park stencil that I think I'm going to use that came in the color add-on for the kit. And now these thickers are called Doll, and they're one of my all-time favorites, and I love them. This year they made them in this beautiful gray foam with a silver glitter all over it. It's so gorgeous. I love, love, love them. And I thought I would call this First Snow 2016 because I'm pretty sure I have another layout somewhere that's called First Snow. It seems like a title I've used before. So I'm not going to leave these wood veneer pieces plain. I'm going to paint them with one of the items that came in the color kit. But first I'm going to figure out my layout, and I'm also going to repackage my thickers. Now I do have a video that shows how I repackage my thickers, but here it is. I have these 6 by 12 inch bags that I just repackaged them into. The bag is just a little tiny bit wider than a package of thickers, which enables me to just slide the thickers in and out really, really easily, and they don't get all caught up on the edges and whatnot. So now this is my Try Plus Art palette. And I use this as a background for whenever I do mixed media. It just catches and it's really easy to wipe up, much more easy than my grid mat there by Martha Stewart. So I'm looking for something here. What am I looking for? I've lost something. I don't know what it is that I lost my stencil, which was very important. So there, I found it. And I'm going to use this Dazzlers stuff. It's called Dazzlers Foiled Again. And it is this beautiful texture paste that is such a shimmery silver color. I can't even explain how beautiful it is. You'll have to take a look at the photos at the end. It's going on looking very gray, but as it dries into a really shiny silvery color. It's so, so pretty. And so I'm just using that. So this Dazzlers Foiled Again came in the color add-on, and I'm using the stencil that also came in the color add-on. And at first I thought I just wanted to make the edges look a little bit rough instead of so perfect. And I kind of just, it's again, I haven't scrapbooked for a while, so I'm a little bit off my game. And I just made the edges, I forgot to graduate the edges so that it doesn't look so obvious that I used a square stencil on my background. And so I just used my palette knife to kind of, I don't know, make the edges look a little jaggedy, but I'm going to go back and do something different anyways. So now what I'm doing is I have this idea where I'm going to use that same stencil on these letters, but I just wanted to get a really thin layer of the Dazzlers on the wood veneer before I used the stencil, just because I love how this Dazzlers, when you put a really thin layer of it on, it becomes really translucent. And I really liked the idea of, instead of having plain wood veneer, of having, you can see that it's wood, but you can see the silver on it too, like just a translucent layer of silver. So it's not just plain wood. And so this effect would actually look really nice if I had left the wood plain as well. So this is totally optional. I just didn't want my wood to be plain, but I think that this would have looked really great on plain wood too. You would have had a really nice crisp look if I had left the wood plain. So either option would be fine. It would just give you a different look, because what the stencil will do, if the wood was plain, it would have a really obvious place where the lines were, kind of like on this paper here that you're seeing me. I'm just using my heat gun to dry it a little bit. And so you'd get that look instead of the look that I'm going to get, you'll see when I actually do it. So I am using my heat gun here on my pattern paper just to dry the Dazzlers. This is my first time ever using Dazzlers, so I don't know how long they take to dry, and I'm not familiar with this medium, so I'm just going to play it by ear and test it out as I go. So now I've let that dry, so I stopped recording for a while and let that dry, and now I'm going to put more of the striped pattern by just filling in between the stripes of the stencil with another coat of the Dazzlers. And I'm just making sure that it goes all the way to the edges, and then I pull it off, and you see that really pretty effect. And now I'm just going to use my palette knife to clean up all my edges, and including the edges inside of those letters. So of course what happened when I applied the Dazzlers is it sunk into all of the crevices of the letters, and so now I just have to carve them out with my palette knife. And I could have used a toothpick or any other little tool that might have been actually a little bit more efficient than using my palette knife, but I was able to get it pretty cleaned up just using my palette knife. So if you don't have another tool on hand, you can just use the knife you are already using. And I just used a piece of deli paper. Deli paper is so inexpensive, and a package comes with so many pieces of it that it's a really nice way to have a scrap paper that you don't have to worry about wasting paper with. And now I'm just cleaning that stencil so that it's not so messy, so that I can reapply just a little bit more. Remember how I said that I forgot to make the edges kind of rough? So this is what I'm doing here, is instead of I'm reapplying the stencil so that it's in exactly the same place, but just a little bit further over. And I'm continuing the pattern of stripes that was already there, but I'm ending it not at the edge, like where it's a squared off edge. I'm just letting it randomly end where it ends. And now I'm going to do the same thing on the other corner. So I'm going to extend it a little bit here on the bottom and extend it a little bit over here on the sides. And if I was really concerned about it, I could let these dry and then get the other two corners, like the top right hand corner and the bottom left hand corner. But I'm not too concerned about it because it's just my background, and it is a bit of a tone on tone because I have this silver Dazzlers layered on top of a gray background. So it's not going to show all that much, and I'm going to have a lot of layering over top of it. So that's where my photo is going to lay. And that's how my letters look now. I think they look really great, and they would look more crisp and clean if I hadn't put the silver on the background before I did the stenciling. I think it would look nice either way. I just had it in my head that I wanted it to look kind of a little bit distressed. and not quite so clean. So now I don't know what I was thinking about there, but I was tapping my fingers and thinking, and I'm just going to show you the package of the Dazzlers. And now I'm going to clean my stencil. And one thing that I find about the Dazzlers is that they're pretty sticky. And so I just took this mist bottle that I have some paint cleaner in. What this is a tiny bit of like maybe 2 or 3 tablespoons of Murphy's oil, and then 2 or 3 tablespoons of dish detergent, and then I fill the whole thing up with water, and that really dissolves both paint, and I was just checking to see if it would also dissolve Dazzlers, and it did. It just makes cleanup really, really easy, and I don't always clean all of my stencils, but when I'm using something a little bit more dimensional like these Dazzlers, I want to make sure that I clean my stencils so that they still lay flat for any further projects that I do. So I'm liking how that looks, even though you can still see the outline of where that original square was in the middle, and the perfectionist in me is thinking I hate that. And so I thought I would splatter some silver Liquitex inks all around the whole edge of this, that it might do a little bit of a good job of just covering up and not really covering up, but just drawing your attention away from the fact that you can see a bit of an outline of where the square was on that stencil. And now I'm just doing my best to clean. That's a very inexpensive paintbrush that I use to sprinkle my ink, my Liquitex inks. And that cleans up really well off that Tri Plus Art palette that's nonstick. And so now I have that background, and I also have lots and lots of silver splatters, and I'm going to and now this is drying, the letter snow, the word snow is drying, and I'm just going to transfer it to a clean piece of deli paper so that I don't accidentally get any of the globs on anything. And oh, I really like how this looks. I like that. It just so happens that the Liquitex ink is exactly the same color as the Dazzlers foiled again, so it looks like it's the same product that's just dripped in some ways and used as a texture paste in another way. Of course, texture paste is much too thick to drip, so I like that these look like it's one product, even though it's different. So I just decided to go ahead and matte my project right now on a piece of white cardstock. I was half thinking about using some foil 12 by 12 cardstock for the back, some silver, but I thought that might be a little bit too much, so I just went ahead and used the white. And now I'm going to play around a little bit with placement, and I've decided to use this as my placement. And so I'm going to just look at what die cuts I might want to use from the kit. And so I have this package of Hip Kit die cuts, and I love that deer, and it's just beautiful. We often have deer. There weren't any that day, but we often have deer and squirrels in our backyard. So the deer and the squirrel will live there and there. And I really like how the deer looks with that snowflake flare badge layered in front of it. And then I thought I'd grab a third little critter, that little pink bird. And I just wanted something behind the snowflake paper clip, so I grabbed that snowflake die cut. I thought it worked really well there. And I have the other snowflake die cut, the other white one from the die cut package. And the squirrel needed something behind it just to anchor it, so I put that pink tree there. And then once I grabbed this pink phrase, that's too much pink, so I'm going to have to put a different color behind the squirrel. So I'm just looking for what that thing might be, and I found that green tree. The baby It's Cold Outside is black, and I like to have a little bit of black on a layout like this, otherwise it feels a little bit floaty. So I grabbed those 2 pieces of black from the die cut pieces, and I'm going to put them somewhere. I don't know exactly where. I thought the bird might look like it's saying, hey, it's snowing, if I put it close to its beak like that. And then if I layer the green tree over top of the pink tree, it tones down the pink and allows me to use, I like the height of the pink tree. I didn't want to do a replacement there because the green tree I think is a little bit too small. So using the 2 of them together, I get to get the size that I want from the pink tree and the color that I want from the green tree. And with the green on top, it works. So now, even though I trimmed this piece down to be even, it's still uneven. So before I place these on my layout, I need to make sure that they're even, because I'm going to use my grid mat to help me guide my placement of these two pieces. I want them to be even, so as long as I keep my layout even with the grid below, I can place these so that they're at the same height by just referring to the grid marks on my work mat. And that makes sure that they're both the same height, and they don't have to be exactly the same because the layout is just a slightly off to the left side, and that's okay. So for that reason, it's okay that the piece of tree paper over on the right is just slightly bigger than the piece of tree paper over on the left. It's okay. It doesn't have to be symmetrical. So now I have to go ahead and glue all this stuff down, and so you saw what I did there. I'm kind of pulling stuff up and gluing it down. And now I'm going to adhere the word first right to the photo. I love how those glittery letter stickers look on those shimmery trees on my photo. Of course, my camera couldn't pick up just how much those trees were glistening, so I wanted to put as much glistening decorations and embellishments on this as I could. So see what I did there? That pattern paper was a little bit distracting in the center of the O, and so I just tore it off before I glued down those letters, the chipboard, the wood veneer letters. And what I really like about the wood veneer letters is that the striped pattern on top of the letters coordinates and lines up with the striped pattern on the pattern paper below from where I put the other stripes on the background paper. And so I really like how that looks. It looks like I just went over the whole thing, including the wood veneer pieces, with some texture paste, and somehow the texture paste got underneath of those letters as well as on top of them. It looks like I did some magic there, but you saw that I actually didn't. And I'm actually going to cover those in before the end of this project, but for now I'm leaving them as they are, because I kind of like them as they are, but you'll see where I changed my mind about that. So I just used a glue dot to adhere that flare badge right above the deer, and these two pieces of washi tape from the kit. I think it's designed by Pink Fresh Studio. They're so cute and they really fit with the theme, and they add a little bit of color to this. Otherwise, it's kind of a drab title, like the word snow is kind of drab. It's all wood and silver. There's no color to it. So the washi, because it's see-through, it doesn't really interfere with seeing the bottoms of those letters, and I just really like how that looks. So now I'm going to take a few minutes here to figure out how I need to layer these trees and the squirrel so that they fill up the right amount of space over here to the left of my title. And luckily, ATG is very forgiving. It doesn't quite dry. It doesn't quite become permanent right away, so you can pull things up and change your mind and move things around a little bit. I'm going to have the squirrel so that he's popped up from the trees and casts a bit of a shadow for extra dimension, so it's really clear that the trees are in the background and the squirrel is in the foreground there. And now I don't need quite that much black here, so I'm just going to tear off a little piece of it. And at first I'm going to layer it right here because I'm forgetting about the fact that I have that pink phrase. And I'm like, wait a minute, that's going to cover up either too much of the S or too much of the black. So I'm going to move the black down a little bit and adhere that pink phrase there. And now I just need a little bit of foam adhesive there to hold the space underneath of that, the edge of that black trim. And that's again from the Hip Kit die cuts that came in the kit. And now I'm just going to use a couple of pop dots on the back part of the bird so that the part of him that overhangs is popped up. And I'm just thinking about placement here, and I like putting "Hey, it's snowing" right by the bird's beak because it does make it look a little bit like he's saying that, which I think is cute. I tilted him a little bit so that he doesn't cover up too much of the W, and also so that it looks like he's kind of peering up towards the photo and saying, "Hey, it's snowing." Now I'm putting my 2016 right down here, and I made it so that it looks like the bird is standing on top of the word 2016, so that the deer is standing on the word snow, and the bird is standing on the number 2016. So I just flipped it all over so that I can trim off my extra pieces of pattern paper that were overhanging, and this one is pretty much designed, like the overall design is finished, but I need to sprinkle some of these beautiful sequins that came in the kit. And whoops, I sprinkled way too much up here. I don't want any of the gold ones. I only want the light pinks and blues and just a touch of the darker pink every here and there. So I'm going to selectively pick some up. I really like how they scattered at the bottom, but I'm not too fond of how they scattered at the top. So I'm just going to gather some of them up and scatter them again. There we go. I like to scatter them so that they land fairly naturally, but they're too spread out now. It looks too contrived. I'll fix it when I go to glue them down. So I'm putting all my extra sequins back in the pocket, and now I have my Tombow Mono Multi adhesive, which is my favorite adhesive for sticking paper to non-paper items. So these sequins are a perfect example of a good time to use the Tombow Mono Multi. And I just let I let one of the sequins land right on top of the bird. I don't mind that. And now I am going to move some of these around, as there weren't enough of them that were close together. Like when they land naturally, two always end up being too close together. So I just made a couple of them closer together there so that it looks a little bit more natural. They never land all perfectly spread out the way I just had them. So what am I doing now? Oh yes, now I'm going to sprinkle a little bit more mist. And instead of mist, I'm using my Liquitex ink, and I'm using white this time. And I'm just going to sprinkle it all over the top of this. So I want it to land on the bird and on the word and on top of wherever it lands. And yeah, I decided to take off that little drop, and I shouldn't have because it left a smear. So I'm actually going to I'm going to recreate that little drop. It looks better with the drop there than with it not there. So the one thing that I'll tell you about using white or gray, I often don't use white sprinkles, splats, on any page that has a bird on it because it looks a little bit like bird poop. And then when you add gray, it especially looks like, or silver in this case, it especially looks like bird poop. And I knew as I did it that I ran the risk of splatters landing around the bird's bum and it looking like bird poop. And of course it did land that way. But I thought to myself, you know what, it doesn't really matter. I really like the look of the splatter, and as long as I don't point it out like I just did to everybody, you probably wouldn't think that it looks like bird poop. It just does to me because that's the way that my mind works, I guess. And look, it's right there in the ruffles of his tail feathers, so that kind of sucks, but it's okay. I don't mind. And I'm going to check and see if anybody mentions it when they look at this page. I mean, obviously all of you guys already know about it, but when family and friends look at the page, I'll take note of whether they mention that or not. So I thought I was done, and I took all those photos, and now I decided, you know what? I need some snow on this layout. So I just thought that the hollows of those letters where the wood veneer is for the word snow just looked a little bit too hollow and too empty, and I thought I wanted to fill it up with something. So I took this stickles, and I actually don't want, this is I forget what this is called, frosted lace, I think it's called, stickles, and this does not dry to a shiny finish. But what it's going to do is it's going to fill up the hole, and then I'm going to put a top coat over top of these stickles of my stickles ice, which dry to look like big crystals of snow. I love stickles ice. So I don't have enough stickles ice to fill this up with that. So I'm going to fill it up with this, which I have a lot more of. And it's almost the same, so it's kind of just a efficient way for me to fill the space. And now, oh, I just have to fill it up a little bit more there. And then I'll come back, and my Stickles Ice comes in a little bit of a bigger, so that's frosted lace, and this one is ice, crystal ice. And it has a bigger nozzle because the glitter in it is quite a bit bigger. And it has this beautiful iridescent glitter. It's really quite lovely. And it dries to look like crispy snow. And so I'm just going over that pile of frosted lace stickles. And now this is going to take a long, long, long time to dry. So I knew that I wouldn't really have enough time to wait for it to dry on camera, so I'm going to turn off my camera in just a second. And actually, I forgot to turn it back on when I did the last thing. So I took a still photo, and you'll see it in just a second. Here it is. So I took this, it's called Twinklets Diamond Dust. And I got this at a craft store quite a long time ago. I don't know where, but as I said, Twinkling's Diamond Dust. And what I did was I just pinched little bits of it, and with my finger I grabbed little pinched sized bits of it, and I sprinkled it all over the stickles while it was still wet. And that gave me this really chunky white topping to my already sparkly glitter glue. And it just looks a lot like snow. It looks a lot like snow is piled into the letters. And so I'll show you close-ups now. And so this is what it looks like. Oh, I think that this is before I added yes, it is. It's before I added the diamond dust to it. So this is just, I also sewed all the way around the outside of it, which I didn't show you on my process. Again, I forgot to record that part, but it's pretty basic and straightforward. And this is what the layout looks like, except for the addition of that diamond dust, which is present in the photos that you'll see very shortly. Oh, I really love this layout. It's so soft and silvery and frosty and cool. I really love it. It was a lot of fun to make this one. So here come the photos now. And so you can see that the letters in the word snow are quite a bit whiter, and they have this crispy, snowflakey topping on them. It's not entirely dried in these photos, but it's mostly dried. So I went ahead and took the photos anyways. And there you see just how shimmery that Dazzler's texture paste is. It's really, really shimmery. It really picks up the light really nicely. And there's, again, it just looks like there's these piles of snow in the shapes of the letters. I really love how it looks. And I love that it's kind of not neat and tidy, that it spills out onto the tiles of those wood veneer letters. I really love the look of it. So it's a much more subtle look. You can't quite read the title quite as easily, but I really love how it looks. It fits with the theme. So thanks so much for watching, and have a really great scrappy week.